We'd like to welcome you to the last one of 2024.
Oh, we cannot hear you.
We will begin at exactly 4 p.m. Thank you for joining us. We've got 1 minute and we will begin. We're just letting everyone file in. We're glad you've been with us here this year. This is the last webinar we have for 2024, and we're very excited about this one. 1 minute and we will be starting. We will start exactly at 4 p.m. All right. Thank you for joining us today. All right, let's get started. Hello and welcome. My name is Althea Rowe. Thank you for joining us for this 30-minute webinar in our Research to Policy Critical Conversation in Language Education series. This year's theme is technologically mediated learning in multilingual contexts. We are examining the impact of technological innovation in learning in multilingual settings, with a particular focus on AI. Today's webinar is What Matters Culturally and Ecologically Responsive Designs, and we will be speaking with Zhao Li. I am also joined by Esther Dijon and Kira Ballantyne. We are recording this webinar and it will be posted on our website after the event. Before we begin, please make sure your microphones are muted to avoid any interruptions. You can also activate closed captioning by pressing the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. This event is provided as a public service. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed belong solely to the guest speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of our organization. Our panel comprises esteemed experts who work in the intersection of research, policy, and practice in language education, language access, and equity. You can learn more about them on the webinar's webpage. We will share the chat in the link. I'm so sorry. We'll share the link in the chat. We encourage you to ask questions via the Q&A box throughout the call. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of our discussion. It is an excellent opportunity to tap into the wealth of knowledge we are fortunate to have here today. Also, please click the chat button at the bottom of your screen to share your thoughts and comments at any time throughout the webinar. Try it out right now by letting us know where you're listening from today. And with that, I will now pass the microphone to our facilitators.
Thank you, Althea. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. This is very exciting. And without further ado, we're going to dive right in. There's a short amount of time, and we want to learn a lot. My first question, Jay, is around computer-assisted language learning. We may have heard about CAL in many different ways, C-A-L-L, not our Center for Applied Linguistics. And it has been around for quite some time. And I wonder if you could start us off by helping us understand how has this field changed and why is it so important that as educators we pay attention to computer-assisted learning?
Thank you very much, Dr. Dejean. And so that is a very interesting question. Call, we call C-A-L-L, call has been evolved quite a bit. Of course, along with the technology advances, we have seen earlier call, we are using electronic dictionary, online dictionary, and digital text to support student learning and to develop use video clips to help student, particular student in foreign language learning context to enhance their exposure to authentic back then pronunciation. To be authentic is important. So authentic conversation and cultural knowledge by using the content developed in let's say English-speaking countries. right? And so it's to enhance the access and more convenient to teach material-wise. And most of the earlier work is push model. For instance, including my research using texting to enhance multilingual student vocabulary learning is we simply develop intervention to use push model. So there's no interaction. Due to many reasons, that is why we develop the culturally responsible pedagogy is important in a core design. So we use push model to provide the targeted words in collaborate with content teachers to enhance student vocabulary to support the student learning. Later, we move to more interactive approach. For instance, a couple of years ago, I had intervention work with a student to improve their academic writing skills. So we are using mind map. It's you find those app anywhere. It's web-based tool. Or I work with a college student who use OneNote in the Microsoft package, right? So student can collaborate, use those kind of in this kind of environment, so become more collaborative, interactive, right? Now, right now, at this very moment, we're looking at AI. You'll find AI, in my perspective, is not another kind of tool. It's a game changer. We can discuss more about that. So this is a technology, because the change of the technology, so our intervention, our pedagogy are able to change along the way. But I haven't seen significant innovative pedagogical change, be honest, particularly in a foreign language context. To teach multilingual learners, most of the context we still using technology as a crutch, not organic seamlessly integration. So this is an area we really need to focus on, pay more attention.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to follow up and pick up on a point that you mentioned in passing and explore it a little more with you. You mentioned culturally responsive, technologically mediated language learning. Could you dig in a little more? Tell us a little bit about what that looks like and why it's important for students?
Thank you very much, Dr. Valentine. My research, right from beginning, even when technology integration is quite minimum, my approach is a pragmatic approach. It's following a logical of reverse engineering. Actually, I first look at the special context and a specific group of multilingual learners, and look at in what context they're living, they're studying, and what their level, and also their cultural linguistic background. So I thought a culturally responsive approach of design should be really aligned with those student characteristics and align with their culture, not only their linguistic and culture background, but also the student's peer group culture, like for youth culture, that's reflect to their preference how to use technology. For instance, 10 years ago, I found them they really focus to use the video, TikTok, YouTube is very important. So at that time, I work with my colleagues at Harvard. We developed video modeling for support student learning academic discourse through debate and video modeling debate of their peers, advanced debate skills. It's quite engaging. Students are definitely quite engaging And we do find, although the intervention period is short, we do find a positive effect. So for culturally responsive approach, usually people only understand is their home culture, linguistic reflect that part, but actually the peer culture and their social economic situation. So the whole those factors should be well aligned with the intervention call design.
Super. And it seems so important, right, that we pay attention to all of these different factors and not just home culture. And I imagine also when we're learning other languages is the cultural connections that we have with other languages as well. So this can be challenging, right? Not all, just in general, but now we're adding the layer of technology on top of that. So can you help us understand a little bit about what you see as what kinds of supports or barriers there are for teachers to ensure that they actually use technology or integrate technology in a way that is culturally responsive, particularly for multilingual learners?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. I think there's a very important aspect for technology integration to teach multilingual learners. Most of our teacher was we work with was oh, I'm not good at the technology, right? And I have so much workload I have to fulfill just to meet curriculum needs. And a multilingual learner was often new immigrant students needs a lot of help. In addition, where I can find the time to learn those technology, where I can find the time, particularly talk about the cultural responsible teaching, you really need to develop a new curriculum. We cannot simply transfer the hard copy material, just put on the digital projector, right? So it's a completely different game strategy. So one thing I thought is really important, we need to change a discourse. A discourse is we teacher, language teacher or any teacher, we are not knowledge holder of technology. And nobody can do it because now I want to make sure I'm because my focus on the technology using AI right now, I try to learn at least 45 minutes every day what's going on, just to scratch on the surface and make sure I know the recent development. You can certainly get news every day, right, about new AI development. So at sometimes it's okay. We don't know everything, but we needed to talk about it with our students. Sometimes our students even ahead of us. That's perfectly fine. And we have a kind of culture, create a culture in the classroom to talk with our student. How can we use a technology to help? Only we know our students' interest and their life. Inevitably they're using it anyways. So right, so we have to join this movement. We have to join, participate. We may not lead it in using technology, but we can certainly make a unique contribution because as a language teacher, applied linguistic, a language educator, we know the language learning principle. We know how the language learning happens, right? So we can help our students to navigate the process of using technology for language learning better, because we can ask good questions and train our students to be critical thinkers along this process. I think that is very important. Instead of our teacher feel like we have to be on the top of our student for all the new technology, I don't think that is quite feasible given our other responsibility, but rather to join this. I think one of the most effective way to do so maybe is a suggestion I hope can reach our policy maker at Ministry of Education, provincial level, state level, at school board level, at a school level, to have sort of develop some kind of incubators for the language integration, or in even cross-subject content. How can we use AI technology to support the student? We're unable to develop a template or model because it has to be localized, all the instructional teaching and learning strategy to be culturally responsive. So, but we can showcase, develop some cases, and to develop some guidelines to show what could happen. And once we are actually not teach our student language, use technology as crutches, we may need to shift our pedagogy to teach our student how to use technology, right? Smart use, critical use of those technology for the language learning. I think that is a big shift. We have to get used to, get comfortable, and to talk about it.
Karen, if I may, before we go to the next question, something that you said kind of triggered an interesting question for me, and that is, I associate AI with algorithms, right? And algorithms kind of go to the mean, right? They try to standardize, they try to find a rule that applies all the time. And yet you say we need to think about AI and context, and we need to localize. And so can you say maybe a little bit more about what does that look like when teachers are being exposed to all of these AI tools, which tend to have this algorithm approach? And yet you talk about culturally responsive and linguistically responsive pedagogies. So can you say a little bit more about how you see those two things interact, and what is the role of the teacher in that space?
That's very good and a really critical question. I will try. I may not have a good answer for it. I will give it a try. So we know now all the programming, including ChatGPT, student use, and I also had enough exposure with my graduate, undergraduate student who submit assignment very generic. It's very, we can almost tell the student submit assignment. There's a very general theme. There's no contextually relevant content to that assignment, and then there's no nuances, no how to say original idea. You can tell it right away. And usually, when I ask a student, I say I thought you actually use the ChatGPT, right? And usually I have been right almost 100%. They acknowledge that they use it. So this is a great question. I think at this point, I found the AI is limited. There's a lot of popularity right now. Think we look at how AI can do, but we didn't look at how AI cannot do. One piece I feel how AI cannot do at this point is culturally responsible pedagogy. Right. So there's a couple of articles published recently talk about how to use ChatGPT to extract the data use in a low reference language. Um, Talk about how relevant the references come out from ChatGPT. They want a recent article, I believe, is published in Poland, talk about a no reference language, a case of Kashubian language, and they want to use the AI to track the certain words related to compared to the old classical method. Wasn't that efficient at this point? So there's a lot to develop. And also, and in addition to, there's a lack of culturally responsive content because the corpus, like the feeding data, is still quite limited, right? Currently AI, they are a language, big language model. They are depends on the data. So even including there's if we want to assess student with those AI, there's a lot of data bias as well. If you want to count on a big pool of the data, right? So I'm counting on when the AGI, artificial general intelligence, come up. At that time, maybe more critical piece will be integrated in AI, will enable some checking the error, be able to self-correct more. And so I definitely don't think AI at this point, particularly for reasoning. Reasoning in I have seen student paper for reasoning is strong enough, particularly when students present during the writing, when they present the evidence aligned with the thesis and the sub-thesis is not well aligned. Of course, people can have an argument to say, "Oh, listen, we should teach a student how to put a proper prompt to so better or ask AI to do a better job." I don't think that's his entire prompt issue. I think it's the current AI is still not able to really produce the culturally relevant content. Maybe in the future, for instance, right now I'm doing research with indigenous students. Our curriculum is based on student tell story, and we co-tell story with student. I haven't tried. I'm going to our next research to see if I can pull same amount of equivalent with the similar difficulty of vocabulary and the same relevant, coherent, the same of the story narratives I can pull from the AI. I will compare whether their content is also equivalent culturally relevant than the content we actually developed with the First Nation student, and whether their vocabulary use is relevant, contextually relevant and accurate.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, as you think, then both you talked a little bit about not only some of the promise, but also some of the necessity around ensuring that our multilingual learners do have technology embedded into their educational journey. And then you also kind of cautioned us with some of the challenges and biases that exist as we engage with these technologies. And so, as you think about this from the perspective of those who are in the position of making educational policy, what guidance would you offer? What suggestions would you make based on your own research background in terms of paving the way forward so that our students receive the benefits, but also that we have guardrails so that we are protected against some of these concerns around bias and what is not included in the technology?
Thank you very much, Kara. So I think this almost the old issue with AI or without AI. It's an old issue. It's the disparity between students have technology access or students don't have technology access among multilingual learners. Is during, for instance, during the pandemic, my participant in the remote Northern Ontario, the high school student, they are about to 2 years to graduate, but they had no access to stable high-speed internet. So during the entire pandemic, there pretty much no online education for them. So we call this concept before is digital divide, right? So the technology access is still a big issue here. And with the AI on board right now, I can see this divide as an outcome of inequity of education access will accelerate. And even now with OpenAI, I think this week or 3 days ago, just issued a new called Pro 01, and the access fee is $200 a month. And the Grok 2 by Elon Musk is you can have 10 attempts a day. So there's a lot of restriction. There's a lot of resources, limitation resources for the multilingual learners. So I think that is the biggest challenge.
Thank you very much. I believe we have some questions from our audience. So let me just look at those for a second. So we have one person who earlier in your talk, you talked about the difference between technology being seamlessly integrated into students' learning versus students relying on it as a crutch. And somebody would like for you to talk a little bit more about what that distinction is there, and how do you know when you're giving students the integration versus the crutch?
And thank you for the question. The crutch, I always think we need to do a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach. Maybe teacher will say, hey, here's a good app we should, from a school district give us, we can use for students. So we will, okay, this classroom will have 10 minutes, let's do it, or 20 minutes, right? I thought that the good integration is take a look at what the student use. For instance, I found a student use a lot of Facebook, including my First Nation student and their family all use Facebook. And one of the Professor Catherine Sun at Harvard, at the time I worked with her, I thought that maybe we can use Facebook to do some intervention. And she said, with the student share the interest with you to do so. So actually, turn out the student tell me said, "Oh no, I don't want to. That's my personal space." But if you use a different social media, I will be very much interested in it. In fact, our survey with 600 students, we find out the multilingual learners are more willing to use the social media to learn like language skill compared to their native English speaking peers. So we found they like, in addition to social media, of course, YouTube, that's something they want us to use. So we use the bottom-up approach. We listen to the student, what they want to use. Instead of we have this convenient package technology tool, so we can to implement in classroom, whether student like it or not, but we'll look at the student's interest first. So this integration usually student engagement level is high. Of course, the first level we need their engagement, and usually the learning outcome is more promising than other way around.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I want to shift now. I have another question that asks a little more from the teacher perspective. So, how do we facilitate ensuring that teachers are learning new technologies and ways in which they can be implemented and applied in language classrooms?
I thought that's really a good and challenging part as for our teacher. As I said earlier, we should first of all teacher to most of teacher feel, oh, it's so difficult, I'm going to learn this is so difficult, those terms throwing around and I don't know. It's okay, we don't know, trial and error. Maybe I think the best way to do so is you will identify in your classroom a couple of kids are very advanced, were very interested in it. You organize a group with your class informally, and you talk about this, discuss about this, and maybe develop some small instructional strategies, small from a little bit a task or not a task, some interesting project related to their schoolwork. And from there, see if other whole class can buy in. And Do not take it like something, okay, this is something I have to get it done, put a whole curriculum on it. So to try in a small way to ease into the main instruction, see how it goes this term with the student buying this idea, and maybe feel like-minded colleague in the school can join you and to do something, and I think to collaborate, to use available resources is very important. And these resources including to teachers' time, right? They already has a long schedule, tight schedule. So to coordinate, create some synergy, not only be among teachers, administration, but also with the student. You will be so surprised. You will find how students were willing to feel like a teacher gave them attention. They're good at something and put in a good use in the school. They were proud of their ownership in those kind of project. I once before did a film project with a student in for the English multilingual learner undergraduate student in the pathway program, and we change a play into a film, short film production. Right now with AI, Sora's recent capacity, a student can create their own films. You have a film project based on, say, we're teaching multi-language learner, we're teaching Shakespeare. Let's create a film. And they can, with that tool, they can learn the language, they can understand the culture, have more depth understanding about the play, about the classical piece, as well as learn new language skills.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Althea, would you like to close us out?
Thank you very much, Kira. And thank you to our panelists. Your time and knowledge are very, very appreciated. We're so grateful for your presence today. A big thank you to our audience as well for being here. We hope to see you in January for our next webinar, but we hope you enjoyed this one. Please watch your email for our follow-up. It will also include a recording of this webinar, and we hope that you respond to our survey. Thank you so much for joining us once again, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.